Hello, everyone. Happy Thursday. Thank you so much for tuning in today with our Nonprofit Enthusiast Live. We have our wonderful Mr. Joe Toliver here with us today. Good morning,
Hello,
Joe.
everybody. How's everybody doing?
Good. So today we are going to be talking about logic models and the role that they play in program evaluation. But before we get started, let's just give it some time. Please invite your friends over to the Facebook group and then tag them into this video so that they can tune in and into the conversation. If you're catching this on replay, give us a hashtag replay. And while we wait, give us a how you doing in the chat box. And we are going to get started shortly. Let's see. Hey, Dolly. All right, everyone. Let me see. There we go. Perfect. All right, everyone, we're going to get started shortly. So this month's Nonprofit Enthusiast Live is sponsored by Nonprofit Enthusiast, as this is our celebration month, as we had our grand opening and everything. And as you know, we're a premier nonprofit consulting firm helping your organization go and grow. So definitely check us out at www.nonprofitenthusiast.com. Thank you once again, everyone, for joining and tuning in with us. Go ahead and invite your friends to the group. If you're catching this on replay, give us a hashtag replay in the chat box, and we're going to go ahead and just jump into the conversation. So today's topic, as you all know, this month's topic is measurement and evaluation. So today we're going to talk about logic model and their role in program evaluation. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Joe, so that we can kick off the conversation and talk about the importance of logic models in program development, and
Sure.
We'll go from there.
Oh, hey, listen, I'm glad to be here today. I know this is not one of the most exciting topics in the nonprofit industry. It doesn't have all the sensationalism attached to it, but it is the forerunner in terms of figuring out the effectiveness of the work that you're doing. To have a logic model really is the preamble to your evaluation process, to your measurement. Without it, it's difficult for you to know what you actually would be measuring. So that is the connection between the logic model and program evaluation. Any questions about that? Because I thought you was gonna stop me, Lasheena.
Oh, no, I'm not. No, we're good. Keep it going.
No, I just wanted to say that. Okay, so and then if it is that, then what is a logic model? What is it? How do you define it? And so you can draw the connection between the two. So a logic model really is your plan on how you gonna do good. It really is all that it really is able to tell. Is how you're gonna do good. It is the structure, it is the plan that you use to create, first of all, sustainability and also effectiveness of your programming, which leads back to measuring. I don't know, Lasheena, have you had some experience with program logic model development?
I have.
Oh, why don't you tell us a little bit about what the distinction between the two, what it is for you in the process that you used?
Well, the logic model, because a lot of times, and I remember just starting and developing programs, we have a passion. You're like, okay, I want to do something for youth. The good thing is the logic model helps you kind of think through the process. What need are you addressing? It's not just running a after school program for youth. It's kind of like it helps you think through, okay, why, really get down to what need am I addressing? What resources do I have available to, help address it? What are some of those key stakeholders? So going through the logic model process helps you think beyond just I guess that initial thought of the program, it helps you kind of go deeper. What outcomes? What do you expect to get out of this program that you're putting into place? So that's why I love when it comes to program development, in infusing and using a logic model as one of those starting points, because it forces you to kind of think beyond just the initial idea.
So I like to take a step back.
Mhm.
One of the things I like to say, you know, for folks who are new in the nonprofit industry, and I consider new, operating under $50,000 for 3 years or less. A logic model really is an important tool to your program success. Not only its tentacles reaches out in many different avenues and capacities of the work that you want to do. For one example is, most new nonprofits, the first thing that they think about is going to get grants, because of course they need resources in order to do the work. Oftentimes we'll talk about that in fund development, about grants, restricted versus unrestricted funds. But the first thing you want to do is go after grants. Well, if you're going after grants, you may have an idea of the kind of programming you want to do, and you may have been doing some programming. But in order for somebody to write you a grant application for you, or for you to write a grant application, you got to be able to talk about a couple of different elements that is associated with logic modeling. And those elements include what's the problem that you're trying to address? Not only what the problem is, but what are contributing factors in relationship to those problems. And then once you make that, you begin to kind of discover who your target audiences are, who your key stakeholders are, and then what strategy you believe that you could successfully distribute or employ that will ultimately allow you to respond to the problem that you have identified. And once you've developed the strategy, the only thing that's left to do really is to come up with actions that's associated with those strategies through the help of those contributing factors, because your goal is to address those problems or challenges that you've discovered in your community, your neighborhood, your school, wherever you're piloting your program at. And once you have all that, wouldn't you want, I'm asking you, Lasheena,
Okay.
at the end of the day, wouldn't you want to know if what you did worked?
Yes.
If it was successful, if it was impactful?
Absolutely. Yes. And I want to be able to tell the story with that as well.
Well, that was going to be my next question. Guess who else wants to know? The organization that gave you those funds. Your community wants to know. Your board members want to know. They all want to know, right, how impactful what you did was. And because you've thought this process out in the logic model process, you've had an opportunity to kind of think through the processes for which you want to distribute the program, who your target audience is for the program, what programs that you feel that you need to incorporate, evidence-based, that work. And at the end of all of that, you should expect some outcomes. And at the end of the day, you should say, hey, listen, I've done all this work, and I expect that my efficacy or my program model will be successful. I will make an impact in my target audience's lives. And that's really how the logic model works against why it's important to program measurement and evaluations. You know, and plus, you know, it also has encouraged you to reflect on your passions, you know, and your ideals. I always say that new nonprofits and people who are in the nonprofit industry, they have a passion for the work. They love it. Even myself, I'm talking about it now, I'm excited. My words are coming out faster than, you know, than I can think about them. But it's the passion that you have for the work. What the logic model does, it adds structure to your passion. It's the connection point for you to actually get the effectiveness. Most of us come into the nonprofit world not knowing a lot about how it all works. So we're learning as we go, right? That's the structure piece. That's why it's so important. And also it's also important for you to connect, to communicate with other folks who are doing the work. One of the biggest failures of new nonprofits is their inability to collaborate, especially on evaluations and measurements. There are plenty of opportunities when you work your logic model that you can connect with others to get information that you need in order to show the effectiveness of your program, or you may need support from others to do a community needs assessment. All of that is a part of your program evaluation. All of that tells what I consider a non-anecdotal story, right? My concept is about program evaluation, that it's not just limited to telling great stories about the people that you've impacted, but also having the data that shows the impact that you created from the programming that you have. So I just think it's important that your organization, when you think about the measurement and evaluation and why a theory of changes is so important, because it provides your organization with the ability to communicate to consumers, funders, your staff, your board members, and guess what? It's clearly defined plan that creates a sustainable impact across the board. And what happens is, if you find at the end of the work that you've done, you didn't quite make the impact, right? You didn't quite score like you thought you were going to score. That's the beauty of this logic model. It's tweakable. You can go back and say, hey, this didn't work. It wasn't effective. It didn't create the kind of change we want. Let's look at it again. That's important, because that's why you are even doing the evaluation, because you want to know that what you're doing is working. And if it's not working, then why would you be doing it? Right? So what are your thoughts, Lasheena? I know you've been out there for quite some time with Love, and, to communicate to your consumers, like that's the people that you're doing the service to. Sometimes they're kind of left out of the information sharing and the communications. I know in some communities throughout the United States, and particularly Florida, some counties are now getting rid of their Florida Youth Survey. That Florida Youth Survey, I gotta be honest with you, after 25, almost 30 years in the industry, that Florida Youth Survey made up the data of the crux of some of my grant applications. It helped drove some of my programs, because I was able to look at the data, right, and show what the indicators of challenges were in particular communities. With that going away in some communities, it's really going to be onerous of individual nonprofits to do their own evaluation and survey. So I think, and I believe as time progresses, funders, because of the missing of that youth survey, will begin to require you to be doing some evaluations. So I just wanted to share those, those couple of nuggets about, what the future of the evaluations are, and how we must be careful about the changing environment for which we are operating in and not being able to access the data. And I just believe that, that there are many opportunities for us to evaluate that are not highly technical, right? We always think that it's a technical thing and we got to have 100 questions. Well, let's stop right there. Let's put a pin in it. You don't need 100 people to fill out a survey to get responses about certain things. You only need a sample survey. And you don't always have to have a focus group to have a sample survey. There are so many tools out there. You can send, I think, Lasheena, you sent the quick survey out last week that asked a few questions. You were able to get that response back. It really set the tide on how we will move forward. So there are many ways that you can collect data and get information, a simple pre and post test. I'll tell you this. So for those of you who worked in program implementation, maybe you ran a summer camp. I was a director over a summer camp one year. We had about 200 elementary and middle school, and we actually had taken over a campus at a school. And it's an 8-week program, as you all know. The requirements for that grant award was that we maintain those students' reading and math levels for which the grade they were coming from. So if they was a second grader, by the time they finished those 8 weeks, Lasheena, they had to still be reading at the second grade level or above. The challenge was, we get in, they come in after a few weeks, they get acclimated, we go ahead and give them the pre-test to kind of measure where they are. You're 2 weeks in giving the pre-test, right? You only have an 8-week program, and your goal is to ensure that their reading levels are maintained over that 8-week period. Very difficult to do, right?
Yep.
But the beauty of collecting data and getting research, two things that we were able to do. For some of those students, we were able to connect back to their home school and get their reading levels when at the end of the school year. So now we know exactly where they are. That grant could have easily failed if we were not doing that. The other piece that we did when they first came in, we give them a quick San Diego quick test, where the first couple of days that they're there, we're measuring their ability to read. And with that information, we were able to kind of add on specific services through volunteer teachers, retired teachers, through presentations, from folks in the community to enrich and enhance those students that we found to be reading under their grade level. It worked, but that shows how using evaluation tools can really offer a benefit to the success of your program. So that's just one example.
Yeah. So I was just thinking about like newer organizations. So I just started, let's say I just started my nonprofit. I got my mission, I got my vision, I got my filings, I got all of that taken care of. But I look at programs and services kind of like at a restaurant. I say this often just because I love food. Like it's like having a restaurant with no chef. You know, it's like you have to invest that time and kind of really build out that menu, so to speak, right? So it sounds like what you're saying is one of the places when I'm getting ready to build my program, I know I want to serve youth. I know I want to do mentorship. I know I want to do back to school drives or these different events and so forth. A good place to start, it sounds like, is with building my logic model and turning these activities into actual programs that's intentional and can also have a proven outcome towards it.
Yes. When you're doing your logic model, in that process, you're thinking about how you're going to evaluate whatever activity that you just discovered that you want to put up as a part of your program. The tape has to be run. Okay, so how am I going to? Is this a pre and post? Is this a satisfaction survey? Is this a survey that I take once, or is this a focus group? Do I bring them all together and use technology like the response cards, like the clickers, where you bring in a focus group and you create dialogue and you allow people to answer questions? There's so many ways, you know. The old folk like myself would say there's so many ways to skin a cat. There's more than one right answer with program evaluation. But the logic model is where you begin to develop what you're going to measure. Once you begin to understand that and your logic model is complete, then you begin to develop your evaluation plan based on that information. So if you're saying that you're going to do a life skills, one of your objectives, one of your activities based on your strategies and your contributing factors is that you're going to do a life skills curriculum. How are you going to measure? So I'm going to measure the life skills curriculum before I measure the eat with your family dinner night, because that evaluation is more prudent to maybe what the funder is looking for, right? So I'm looking to measure all of these different indicators. It's easier to do if you thought about it when you're developing your program, and then you develop an evaluation plan for how that evaluation process is going to happen. So if I'm going to do, I'm going to decide that this is an opportunity for me to do pre and post testing. Well, the evaluation plan would start to describe, hey, that pre-test would be given this day on this month because we know that we're going to do this amount of programming during this period of time, and at the end we should expect this particular outcome to have happened, whether it was changing their perception or whether it was changing behavior or an increase in knowledge. Those are the things that you typically are measuring because they prove the efficacy of your programming. And if you have your logic model done, you got your program, boom, you're good. All the way from pillar to post. You can give it to any grant writer, they can run with it. You can give it to any funder, they can understand the work that you're doing. You can give it to your board. They become champions of the work you're doing because they know exactly what you're doing, because you've given them the roadmap, which is your logic model, which is your theory of change. How are you going to change these folks' perceptions, behavior, knowledge? And that's why it's so important for organizations to have their logic model done and complete, and also to add an evaluation plan on it, to actually have a real intentional plan to evaluate the effectiveness of your program.
Love it. And one thing that I love that we do when we're working with organization and their boards, not just the founder, but also board or other key stakeholders, in developing the logic model is, one, they're able to get all of their ideas collectively out on paper and somewhere where we're all kind of able to work together because we understand what our goals are together. And two, something that you always emphasize is now you've already started building champions for your organization, because oftentimes as founders, you might say, oh, I got to do this, I got to do this. No, from the very beginning, you need to pull others into the conversation, so that they can communicate on behalf of your organization, because they were there at that founding process. So that's one of the things I love when we're doing these logic models with organizations. We're not doing them alone. We're doing them collectively. And then we get the buy-in from the very beginning of some key stakeholders that are going to last a lifetime.
Right. Sustainable. Yeah. Sustainable too. You know, when, you know, the largest, the hardest part for new nonprofits is to get funding, right? The best way to secure funding is to have a couple of things into play, right? If you want to build your organization's capacity to receive funding, whether restricted or unrestricted, here are a few things that you need to do as a few hints before we close out, right? And all of these things that I'm going to mention to you, we over at Nonprofit Enthusiast can definitely help you with. The one thing and the most important thing is what we're talking about now. You definitely need your logic model completed. Your logic model will evolve into an evaluation plan that will also evolve into a budget for your programming. If I question folks right now and ask, how many of you know how much money you need in order for you to realize your dreams for your program? People would be perplexed to answer that question. And I've been asking it for a long time. And nobody's yet said, oh, I need, you know, because it's one of the last thing our passionate people think about. We think about how we're going to change people's lives, not the dollar bills that's associated with the work. And I'm trying to create the balance for you, that you should have a balance of both of those. And so not when you have your logic model done and you have your evaluation plan completed and you're able to articulate your budget based on your actions, then you can start to move into your fund development and develop your fund development tools. So now you can raise money to support the initiatives that you got on paper that's ready to go. You know, whether you're raising that money through grant applications, or you're raising that money through foundation, submitting proposals to foundations, or you're doing it the good old fashioned way. You're doing event fundraising and you're out there washing cars, having events, parties with purposes, and you Giving Tuesdays. There's so many different ways, but those few components that I just described to you are very important tools for new nonprofits and for existing nonprofits, if you don't add it, to accomplish success. And I'll also say this, if you follow this, what I'm suggesting, it'll help you get some sleep at night.
Oh yeah.
It'll help you get some sleep at night, because what you're doing for yourself is helping yourself move away from a sense of incompleteness. And that is the most restful state. You can really get into REM sleep when you have moved away from that sense of incompleteness. And that probably is a whole topic in itself of how you get to that space. But part of getting to that space is to have your organization focused in on some, oh goodness, I apologize. Have your organization focused in, no, I just got a message.
Oh, no problem.
Yes. Okay, so have your organization focus in on really focusing on who you are as an organization. Your identity as an organization is very important. Your identity is encompassed on your ability to sustain the work over the course of the time. One of the things that new nonprofits have, and where evaluation and measurement helps, is sustainability, right? You want to sustain the work that you're doing, and evaluation and measurement, as my last point, really helps with that. It really helps you target in on, okay, now I'm going to evaluate this. I can go to my funder and say, hey, listen, here's what we've been doing. Here's the impact that we've been creating. You should fund the work that we're doing. And I that is the best way to get folks interested in you. And I'm going to say this quick nugget. Focus in on receiving unrestricted dollars in the beginning of your process. Focus in on your evaluation tools being something simple and quick, that's not long and onerous, of the person who has to fill out the survey. I mean, the top is 10 questions. Keep it, like they say, simple, stupid. And I think that, and I'll tell you this last quick one, Lasheena. When I was doing community needs assessment, one of the things that I understood, I wasn't as savvy in technology 15 years ago, but one of the things that I understand is if I wanted to get information about the community that I was doing work in, I needed to go to where those folks were hanging out at. And I wanted parents. And for most nonprofits, parents are really the hardest component to get unless you're doing daycare with them, unless you're keeping their kids. It's really hard to get parents engaged and involved. And also now you're asking them to fill out a survey. So listen, I knew parents were at specific places at specific times, and all of a sudden, Lasheena, I just show up. I pop up, I got food, I got candy, I got potato chips, I got little things, because guess what? They're out there at their kids' Optimus football or Optimus basketball right after work. They want a snack, they want to do this. What harm is it to answer my 3 to 4 question survey for a lollipop or for a bag of Frito-Lay potato chips?
Love it.
and listen, it worked. It worked, and I was able to get my information. I was able to understand more about this community. That's on a small scale, right? That's just me going out there doing what I want to do. Now, let me tell you on a larger scale, and I'll finish with this. On a larger scale, I was able to look at a community needs assessment by getting 7 questions added onto a city's robocall. So during this time, robocalls were very important and very useful, right? I don't think anybody get robocalls anymore. But they would send these robocalls out, and they would ask these questions. And listen, almost 85% of that community responded to those robocalls.
Wow.
And that's a large sample.
Good.
That's a very large sample, and it spoke volumes about their community. So I want to tell you, there's easy ways to do it. There's big grand scales ways to do it, but it has to be done in order for you to have success and for you to fund the work that you want to do.
Love it. Awesome. So Maria said those are great ideas. Hey, Sarah, thank you for tuning in. Hi, Danita, good to see you. Shadi, I hope I said that right. Thank you so much for joining us. She said, love this. We have Mimi Robinson. Hello. Thank you for tuning in. All right, well, thank you all. Hi, Rachel, thank you for tuning in. Thank you all so much for tuning in with us today. And something that you hit on a few times is money. You talked about fund development a few times and unrestricted funds. So if you have not done so, on May 24th is our next free webinar at 7 p.m. I just dropped the link. You can go ahead and register there to join. You'll hear Joe talk more about fund development and the fund development process during that webinar. So definitely that's your homework, to go ahead and register for that. And then your other homework is, if your organization does not have a logic model in place in order to help develop your programs, go ahead and start one. And guess what? If you're like, I don't know where to start, give us a call. We got you covered. You can go to nonprofitenthusiast.com, just schedule a consultation. It'll be with myself or Joe. And we got you. Go ahead and give us a call. And we're here to support you. Remember, the biggest thing is you don't want to do it alone. And that's a common theme that you're going to hear us talking about. Don't do it alone. And the other thing you're going to hear us talking about is building your organizational capacity so that you are equipped and ready for those funds to be flowing into your organization. So definitely do that. Last but not least, next month's theme is year-end planning, because some nonprofit organizations is getting ready to close out their fiscal year on June 30th. And even if you are not getting ready to close out, you definitely want to tune in so it can prepare you for the end of the year, as we're going to have, we actually have a pretty booked month. We're going to have a lot of guests that's going to be joining us next month. And we're going to be talking about year-end planning. We're going to be talking about fund development, fundraising, and those different topics as you prepare to plan for what's ahead for your organization. So definitely tune in for that year-end planning. Next month will be that. And as I mentioned before, if you're like, I don't know, there's so much different things that I need to do for my organization, follow our themes. Every month we have a theme. This month was measurement and evaluation. Next month is year-end planning. If you missed months, go into our guide section of the Facebook page, click on guides, and you'll see the topics that we've talked about in the past. So board development, those type of topics in there. We made them easy for you to find. Just go into the guide section. So other than that, we appreciate you all tuning in. Thank you, Joe. You know, we always love when you're here.
Hey, I'm glad I could be here.
We appreciate it. And thank you all, everyone. So we'll see you next Thursday. Like I said, we have a lot of guests coming in for the month of May. So just stay tuned and we'll announce them as we go. So thank you all. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. Bye, everyone.